Welcome to the Homegrown Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Hazelmeyer, along with my husband, Joey.
Good afternoon.
And together we hope to educate, inspire, and equip you in your pursuit of true nourishment. Today's guest is Matt McLean. Matt is the founder of Uncle Matt's Organic Juices, and we're going to dive into all things surrounding the organic industry, what that means to him, and hearing a little bit of his backstory. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on, and nice to meet both of you.
Yeah, we're excited. So let's start from the beginning. You said you had a pretty cool origin story. So I want to start the audience there so they can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was in my blood from the beginning. Fourth generation Florida citrus grower, seventh generation Floridian. So we have a little bit of history here in the state. I'm calling you from just west of Orlando, a little town that I grew up in, Claremont. It's about 30 minutes from Mickey Mouse. Used to be surrounded by citrus, and now we're surrounded by homes. We got discovered here. My great-grandfather, he came down to Bartow in the late 1800s, and he was a turpentine farmer. He also did vegetables, cattle, and also citrus. Luckily for me, the citrus was passed on to my granddad, to my father, and then to myself. My dad and granddad went to the University of Florida. They are trained agronomists, along with my brother. I was the business guy. I wanted to get out of citrus and working in the groves over the summer. And so I got a degree in finance with a minor in economics. And from there, I started a little import-export business. I had one of the customers of my father. He was a German fella, and he was a grower. And my dad had done some work with him, consulting, trying to help him on his grove. And so he said, hey, I really need somebody to help me. In Europe, I have friends that are German bottlers, and they need great tasting juice, and Florida is the place to go for it. And fresh out of college in 1993, I said, hey, that sounds like fun. I get to travel to Europe. Sure, I'll do it. Why not? And that was the beginning of me learning about juice and great tasting juice. And also going around the state, I met all the different juice processors at the time. We had over 30 different processors. And so I used our, good name between my dad and granddad to get my foot in the door as a young guy and find the right Brix acid ratio, the right oil level, all those things that made a great tasting juice. And we put it on a boat and we sent it to Holland. And then from Holland, it trucked down to the different bottlers in Germany. And one of those fellows so I did that from starting in 93. So 96, 97, I had one of those customers ask me for organic. Until then, it was just conventional orange juice and grapefruit juice from Florida. Mm-hmm. And I said, that sounds great. I don't know anything about organic, but I will try and find it for you. So I came back to the U.S. and figured out what organic was, found some growers that were certified organic in Florida. This was before the USDA organic seal became prevalent in 2002. So, 96, 97, 98, I'm fooling around trying to figure out organic. At the same time, I had that typical entrepreneur aha moment of, hey, is this something that the market is selling in the U.S.? And, it wasn't. Nobody was doing organic orange juice. There was no Trop or Simply version. So I thought, if it's trending in Europe, it definitely could trend in the U.S. And it made perfect sense for me as the multi-generation citrus guy. We had always been growers, my dad and granddad and great-grandfather. None of us had ever had a brand. And I was just young enough and dumb enough to say, why not? I was not married at the time. I had nothing tying me down. And I had a very successful import-export business that could pay the bills. So I started Uncle Matt's Organic, and the idea bloomed from that experience with the German customer, Mr. Noy.
Wow. I love that. I wonder how often people look to Europe and think, if this is thriving there, let's bring it to the States. I feel like we're always a little behind.
There's a good amount of definitely food trends.
Yes.
Will flow from Europe
food, fashion,
into the U.S.
Music.
But one key point is when I came back, we also had to figure out, can we grow it? I knew the couple growers that I had, they were small. And if this was going to be something I was going to launch as a brand, and the U.S., the U.S. market's huge. It's the largest in the world. And so I went to my grandfather and dad. My granddad was still alive at the time. And I asked him about growing organic. Can we do this? How do we do this in Florida? And he was basically offended and chuckled at the same time and said, listen, I was alive before pesticides were invented in the 40s. And we farmed perfectly fine before pesticides were invented. And, it wasn't disproven. It was merely kind of displaced by different technologies. So we used cover cropping. We used compost. We sprayed natural things. We worked in harmony with nature. And today, he would say, we were too addicted to pesticides and single factor analysis. If you have a pest, find a pesticide instead of what's attracting it. Can you deter it naturally? Can you have a healthy tree and its own immune system tolerate it and live with it? And so he gave me the confidence that, all right, if my granddad and father think that we can grow it, then I will move forward because I believe I have long-term supply. And we did. And so June of 1999, I started with pulp-free orange juice, one little item. We found a co-packer nearby. He was actually a friend of the family, and he did his best to give me the advice that was right at the time, which was, hey, kid, you have no idea what you're doing. You're going to lose all your money, and this is a bad idea. And at the time, he actually was right. That actually was and then he ended it by saying, do your parents know what you're doing? Because he knew my parents.
Oh, what a vote of confidence there. I love what you said. Organic wasn't disproven, it was displaced. I've never actually heard anyone say it that way, but that's such a good reminder that like we didn't steer away from it because it wasn't working.
Correct.
We brought something else in because that's what the industry wanted. Honestly, like it's a weird thing to even think about. So the fact that you were able to talk to someone who was like, listen, I remember what it's like before this time.
Correct.
Is such a good insight and to give you the confidence you actually did need. So
it was so rewarding for my granddad. Think about that in his life. He was, was he probably late 70s at the time and had been farming all his life. And so at the end of his life to go back to one, like we can go back to our roots of how we farmed and how he'd been preaching for a while. Like, this is why we're having so many problems in the orchard. We're not going back to some of these old methods. We're our own worst enemy. He kind of laughed like we're, just part of the combine. And they got us right where they want us. And then at the same time to then have our own brand so we could reach all the way through to the customer. And we could tell them about farming and we could tell them about quality and focus more on quality where, those new technologies that displaced organic, they were more about production. They wanted more boxes per acre, more gallons per acre, all of those things, and not necessarily more quality per acre, higher bricks and better nutrient density and those things. And that's what, the older farmer and the holistic goal of an organic farmer is, increase that nutrient density, really putting more nutrition per acre, not necessarily just more production per acre. That was what my granddad was all about.
So this German asks you for organic juice. This is back in the late 90s?
Yeah, 96, 97.
And so there's no USDA organic regulation. So where did you go to learn about organic?
So there was the California Foods Production Act of 1990. The pioneers before me had already paved a path and had written some rules and standards on what it would look like if you had an organic, playbook. And so we had a local certifier, Florida Organic Growers, which eventually became QCS today, who is still our certifier today. They certified everybody to that California Food Production Act of 1990. And so that was like the precursor to the USDA's rule in 2002. And a lot of that just rolled over into that same law. So we would have that certifier would come out just like the USDA tells them to do today. They would do annual inspections. They could do unannounced inspections. We have to keep detailed records. 3 years from the last prohibited substance is when you could be called it organic. So we started with my dad's 3 acres in his backyard. Part of the story is perseverance in our family as farmers. My father and grandfather, up till 1983, they had amassed 550 acres in Lake County, where we reside today. So they own that much acreage themselves. But Christmas Eve, 1983, it got down to 19 degrees and it stayed there for a while, too long. And it killed literally every single acre in the Central Florida area. 7 counties, almost 300,000 acres were killed in one cold night. Unbelievable, devastating. It was before really crop insurance was prevalent. It was before microjet irrigation was there to help save the trees. So my dad tells the story, and he's still alive today, which is great. He comes into work every day. It's awesome. But he'll tell the story that, overnight I went from asset rich to completely in debt and poor.
Yeah.
And so they had to change their whole lifestyle. My grandfather and dad had to sell off all the land over the course of the next decade for, $1,000 an acre. Really, there was plenty of land was plentiful. Today, that land would be worth $100,000 an acre. So it happens. It's farming and agriculture. My grandfather moved south 2 hours, and he became a consultant and lived out the rest of his life just helping other citrus growers become better farmers. My father stayed up in Claremont in this area. He became an international citrus consultant. So he flew to Mexico, Costa Rica, the Bahamas, Dominican Republic. He went all over to help other industries because that's where he had his most value. Plus, he helped people in Florida. But it was very difficult time for the family. I was 12 years old, and then it froze again in 85 and 89. So it wiped out citrus in this area. Our little agriculture society in Claremont turned into a commuter city for Orlando. So the whole way of life changed here. And we saw it right before our eyes because of 3 cold nights. But so we started then, when I started Uncle Matt's, we had 10 acres left where I grew up, and half of that was in citrus. And my dad turned that organic. So we started with transitioning that to organic. We worked with existing organic growers in the state. And then we rapidly started converting other farmers to organic. We had a wonderful reputation. My dad and granddad, they had great integrity. They paid everybody back. They didn't walk away from any debts. It took them a while, but they paid everybody back. And so while we were just farmers, we had a great reputation of multi-generations in the citrus industry. So it allowed me to go around and talk with growers with my father and convince them, hey, try organic. It's a different way to farm, but we have a brand we're connected with. We will help you grow it, and we will also be an avenue to sell it, and you'll have a good, much higher price than conventional. So we took that little 3 acres in my dad's backyard, and we ballooned it to 1,500 acres across 3 different counties, over 35 different growers. We had our own ag team. My dad and brother are the agronomists, and so they led it. We had a team of 20. We had, tractors, mowers, fertilizer spreaders. We made our own compost spreader, which was the coolest thing. It looked like a big dump truck driving through the grove, but it could put out, 3 tons per acre at a time, and it was blowing compost everywhere. And then the sad part, and this is farming again, another part of adversity. This little bug shows up in around 2012, 13, 14, and it is the Asian citrus psyllid. And this little bug has a bacteria in its stomach. It doesn't harm humans, but it's harmful to trees. In Florida, because of its subtropical climate, it is ground zero for this disease. And the little psyllid goes around and it sucks proteins out of the leaf. But when it does that, it transmits that disease into the tree. And it basically clogs up the main artery of the tree. And the tree eventually, the fruit doesn't mature, hence the term greening. The fruit stays green, it drops off, the tree becomes unproductive, and the farmer no longer makes any money. And so that is what has happened since 2015 until today. So in 10 years, our 1,500 acres has gone to 70 acres with 3 growers. And those acreage is just for our research and development to try and find a cure. There's no cure conventional. There's no cure organic. There's other regions now that we work with around the globe to support Uncle Matt's. We work with Texas, California, East Coast of Mexico, Brazil, Peru, and even Morocco, where we have met some really great growers. We have told them all kinds of things that we have learned about citrus greening. They are fortunate to be in those regions a lot drier, more arid conditions, a lot warmer over the summer. So it almost bakes the bacteria out of the tree. And the little vector that spreads it, it's not a climate that's conducive for that vector. So we believe that they will be resistant to the disease. Not all regions, but most of them are. Our goal is to replant Florida, but we're a long ways from it. If we can find a cure, and the industry really right now is at its knees, and it's very sad. But it's agriculture, it's business. You find a way to win.
I was gonna say, when that bug takes over, is there a way to kill it off? And once the bug leaves, do you have to just uproot everything and totally replant? What would that even look like to bring that back?
Yeah, so our grows outlasted most of our conventional neighbors, but it still succumbed to them nonetheless. There is no cure. The little vector, we try to control the vector with neem oil and natural sprays. We release a lot of natural predators that will keep that population down, but it only takes one bug to infect. It's kind of like the mosquito with malaria is the great, comparison. The thing you have now, there are resistant, or I would say tolerant. There are tolerant new varieties that are coming out, but you have to replant them. It's expensive to replant. It takes 5 to 7 years before that tree would then be productive. So you have to invest 5 years of capital plus, the tree and all that. And there's not a lot of people that are very bullish when they see everything around you dying and going backwards, and the just infrastructure of the industry to go from 35 juice plants when I started, in this thing 25 years ago to now, you have 3 that are kind of open and still running, and the whole state could be processed in one juice plant. That's how low the crop is. But farmers are a resilient bunch, and we're a resilient group. I believe we will eventually find a cure. I think it's probably not going to be a silver bullet. It'll be a more holistic approach. We have seen some success with some of our methods, both organic and conventional, but nothing is foolproof to date. What they're currently doing is literally building a screen house. So a glorified big greenhouse around the citrus tree at the tune of $50,000 an acre, which is extremely expensive. So it's not conducive to the average farmer to be able to do that.
What was your response when you went to some of those farmers early on and said, hey, if you can grow this organic fruit, I have a brand that I will help connect to the customer? What was their response to you?
We had multiple different types of farmers that we would work with. Some were merely just, they were all about, hey, what's the bottom line? Can I make a better return that way? Then I'm on board. I'll give you a percentage of my acreage to try it. And that was completely fine. And then you had the other side, which was, hey, we believe in organic. We believe in growing for the next generation and using less harmful pesticides and things out on the farm. And so you didn't have to convince them at all on that piece. And then you had some in between, right? But it didn't matter. We would take them all. And that was the beauty of it. Like, if you're all about return, that's fine too. If you're all about the environment, that's fine too. We can help and work with everybody. And at the end of the day, we knew we had to do both to really, be consistent with our mission and our goals, and then also to make sure people are making money. And they did. Our growers on average made a lot more money than our conventional counterparts. And so that was always exciting to, at the end of the season, you'd send out your grower returns and checks, and you knew that from a comparison to the conventional price, we were much higher, and they were really excited.
What has that been like over the last 25 years to see because as the consumer looking at it on the shelf, you'd never know that story. You'd never
Right.
know that you went through all these crazy obstacles. Um, but what has that been like for you sitting at the helm and seeing all this go through? Are there moments of doubt? Are there moments of breakthrough that you're just like, oh, this is unbelievable. I'm bought it. Like, I want to hear that part of it.
It's it's such a different business model now because we're not actively growing everything that we sell. And
Yeah.
so I love the growing part. It's definitely in my blood. There was nothing like taking several days out of the week and driving the 3 counties and riding it, looking at all the different groves and meeting those growers and talking about the progress we had made and the upcoming seasons or the returns they just gotten. That was like the pinnacle of life from someone who grew up as a grower. Now it is a lot less of that reward, and it's more of working with growers that they're still great people, but I'm not flying all the time to Texas because I'm in Florida. I'm not flying all the time, to Mexico or California. I go there and still visit annually, but it's just a different aspect, right? And it's more of a relationship that is, it's not as deeply rooted because we were there before. We were in control of our entire farm plan. We were sitting down in the ag meetings talking about, okay, when are we fertilizing? What are we using this time? What compost source? What's the latest, analysis of our compost? How do we make better compost tea? Just the nuts and bolts of the growing side. We miss that part. We're still doing it, but on a much smaller scale. So that part I do miss. But on the flip side, we've now got into manufacturing. So we were doing our own bottling. Before, I'd had zero time being a farmer and the marketer. Now we have a lot more access to doing our own manufacturing. And that's a lot of fun. To have our own bottling facility, everything that goes into the quality aspects of bottling, from the cap and label to the time and temperature of pasteurization, to making sure the cold chain stays cold, and all of the challenges and rewards that come with making a highly efficient manufacturing facility.
That's so cool. What is it? Have you had any sort of response from the customer? What have you seen? Because I know that you guys have also, you've branched out from just traditional orange juice. You started with that first pulp free, and now you have a slew of things. I think the last thing we've bought was your immunity drink that has like extra zinc in it. We grab that
Ultimate
anytime
Immune. It's nice and purple.
Yes, we grab that anytime our kids are feeling a little under the weather. And so, yeah, when we were talking about this podcast, I was like, it's the immunity drink. Like, that's what we have in our fridge.
The purple one.
The purple one. So what's that been like from the customer standpoint, from the brand standpoint? Have you had conversations with them? What's that look like when you're looking to create new product for them?
Well, right out of the gate, when we went from being all Florida, I was the proudest Florida grower, multi-generational guy. It was plastered all over our website. It was on our, proudly displayed on our package. And I suddenly had to change that. I had to say product of USA and Mexico. And it was like, wow, like, no, I can't, I can't sleep at night. And I didn't sleep for a while. Like, it's horrible, but I knew we had to do it. And we wrote a very, actual, just realistic letter and put it on the website. Like, hey, this is why we're doing it. And it's about survival. This is what we're finding out in the groves. Our long-term goal is to be 100% Florida again. I hope that we can do it. And literally every year I continue to hope and pray for that outcome. And it's not there yet. So we continue to do something different. So the reality is that model has changed, but we have wonderful partners that have great quality that we can still make a consistently great tasting orange juice with, which is awesome. And it's still our flagship and it's our number one selling item. But it's allowed us to, by surviving so long, it's allowed us to then branch out to do the functional drinks where we added elderberry, boosted with acerola, vitamin C, zinc, and D, which we called Ultimate Immune. We also have an Ultimate Defense, which is orange juice blended with turmeric, pineapple, and ginger, and probiotics, and also boosted with vitamin C. And then lemonades and punches that are delicious. And we've even started now with our manufacturing facility doing fresh brewed refrigerated tea. And I really like that aspect of the business. It's very brand new. But I believe, as long as you start with, you want to, whatever you're going to do, make sure it tastes great. And we can be consistently great with providing that to the customer. We have a pretty good chance with the brand that we've established over 25 years. People trust us. And so we take that in. Now, we also have little kids' juice boxes. We got into doing that. And we also do different kind of shots, the little 2-ounce shots that are, popular for people.
I have kind of a selfish question. When you're in that meeting and you're talking through like new innovations for your product, I'm sure you get a lot of really good ideas. How hard is it to say no to the good ideas so you can get to the great one?
Yeah, so we have learned over the years we've got a pretty good, diverse little mix of people on our innovation team at Uncle Matt's. All employees, but kind of, different age and genders, and, some sales, some marketing. And so that helps to get a diverse set of opinions besides just mine.
Yeah, right.
Which is great. So really trying to look at, different angles from what's the customer really asking, to make sure we don't get too far removed then from our core mission and our core values and what we think we could do consistently great. If I didn't think I could make tea consistently great, I would never have tried it. And I don't know if it'll work long term. Ultimately, the customer decides by velocity and pulling it off the shelf. But I'm not afraid to try new things. I have plenty of stuff sitting back behind the desk and over there that's the boneyard of ideas that I thought were the greatest. We launched them, and I think I was the only one that drank them. But that's okay. Some of them I was before my time. It's kind of funny to look at like, hey, that's actually now trending more, which is fun to see. But we just try to do more research and really look at what the customer can do, or what the customer's asking for, and stay within what the brand's mission and ethos, and relatively in our space. So we don't want to come out with deodorant. We don't want to come out with milk. We don't have to too far out of what our brand's promise is and what you see us as. But refrigerated beverages, or something to do with great tasting organic juice or punches or lemonades, I think we can do that pretty well, whether a shelf-stable juice box or refrigerated in that dairy set.
Yeah. The beverage category is, I feel, exploding. Maybe you feel like it's been exploding for years and years, but I know for our family, like, we buy way more beverages now than we probably did 5 or 10 years ago. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree with that.
So it's so interesting too, being one of the first people on the shelves to really claim that organic. Now you see other brands maybe following suit. What is that journey like? Are you inspired by that? Is that like, what is that like for you?
I think it's awesome. And, our goal is to make organic prevalent across the whole supermarket, right? In every category. If I could see, organic to be a substantial percentage of each category, that mission accomplished for me. And we have our one little beverage sector, and I think it's awesome that more and more beverages are launched that are organic, even if it takes away customers necessarily from Uncle Matt's because they have more organic options. I'm still completely fine with that. It's the old rising tide, raises all boats. And it's just more awareness around, I believe, a farming method that is better. And it's something better for our planet. It's better for human health. So I get really excited when I see more organic items launched. I get to, not as excited when I see, just non-GMO, while it's a little bit of a platform into organic, but, people will put the non-GMO seal on orange juice, and there's no genetically modified available oranges anyway. So they're just trying to greenwash into hey, I'm kind of, maybe I'll fool you to think I'm organic. That's disappointing.
That is disappointing. How often do you see that confusion among consumers? Do you run into that where you're having to explain to them that just because it's non-GMO doesn't mean it
Right.
necessarily applies to that?
Yeah, I mean, as an industry spokesperson, I know our trade association. I spent a lot of time on the Organic Trade Association, 9 years on that board. A couple of years I was elected president.
Oh, wow.
But it doesn't matter. Every year it was the same. How do we cut through all of the confusion? And so that organic is the gold standard of food, the gold standard of whatever it's on, and all of the other NASCAR symbols of CPG aren't as high up as the gold standard of organic. So whether it's non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, all the different things that, while they have their own validity, if you don't see organic as the gold standard, then it can easily, your message could get lost or co-opted by something else.
Mm-hmm.
Has this organic practice, again, you have like the farming side, then you have the food and beverage side, and I know they both kind of correlate pretty similarly, but you started this in the late 90s, this organic practice. Has the regulations of organic practices changed or evolved from, let's say 30 years ago to now?
Yeah, every year the National Standards Board, Organic Standards Board, the NSOB, they meet, and it's a conglomerate of industry people. The USDA oversees it, and so they will talk about which items to keep on the list or which items to remove from the list. And people can petition and say, hey, I want to add, this latest product that I have, and the NSOB reviews it and they vote on it. And whether it gets added or not is an industry group and peers that look at the regulations and say, does this fit within the law or not? So there is a great process around that. I can't give you an accurate number of just how much got added versus how much got removed. But there is a wonderful process around it with the National Organic Standards Board to vote on and look at stuff. And it's public. Anybody can attend. So it's not, backroom deals. And the other interesting thing that I also remind people about the USDA Organic Seal, it's the only seal that you'll find on all that food packaging where you can go to jail if you lie. There's teeth behind it because it's enforced by the USDA. So you can not only be fined, but you could be incarcerated. And in America, we value our freedom. That's a pretty good deterrent. And you don't have that with, fair trade symbol, non-GMO symbol. You don't have that same teeth or deterrent to it. So I always tell people, hey, organic is by far the gold standard in its regulations, but then also its enforcement side and penalties if you break those laws.
Yeah, I've heard that before, that it's like federally backed, right? Because the USDA is in charge of it. It's really the only one that you're not going to see anyone trying to fudge it. And I'm interested on your take, and feel free to go wherever you want with this, but we've often discussed this idea that like people think organic is a marketing ploy, right? You'll hear a lot of people say like, oh, it only is there to increase cost of the good. And, Joey and I know, and our audience know, because we've had many growers and farmers and producers on the show, that that's just not true. But I'd love to hear your take on that. Like, what would you say to someone who's a little bit skeptical of, why would I buy that organic juice? Like, why does the organic part matter?
Yeah. I mean, you could look, I just kind of, first off, there's doubters on anything, right? I think if you just look at the growth of our industry, we're having success and the message is resonating. You could look at the allowed substances for a conventional farm. What is allowed conventionally to use? And then look at and compare what's allowed from an organic, and compare the two different lists, right? And then compare all of the skull and crossbones on this list and their labels versus the skull and crossbones on the organic list in labels. And then look at the potential side effects if you ingest this one or you ingest that one. And then what happens if you ingest multiple of those or come in contact with them? And then just take a step back and say, well, which one would you prefer if it was your kid, right? I mean, take an extreme. And I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just, for my own family's sake, that was kind of where I came to the conclusion as a young man starting Uncle Matt's Organic. I mean, organic is a whole lot harder to do. It's more expensive. It's, I could have been Uncle Matt's and skipped the organic piece, and my life would have been way easier. Can tell you that, way easier. But I didn't, and I did it for a reason. And that reason was I truly believe, like just what I said, less skull and crossbones put out is a good thing. It's a good thing for the environment. When you look at what, just take Roundup, for example, the herbicide, and what it'll do to the friendlies in the soil from bacteria, fungi, those things. It kind of like a nuclear bomb goes off with activity in the soil, versus if you're just, if you're not using Roundup, you still have the mycorrhizae fungi that work in synergy. You still have a lot of those great bacteria in the soil that work in synergy with the roots. And those are things that are important. So I can go, much deeper, but for me, that's where the rubber hit the road. And now that I'm a dad and I have, raised kids, I have pets that run around out in my yard. I have backyard chickens at one time, I have an organic garden. I feed the chickens, all those things matter. And you see sort of the circle of life from the soil all the way to what you're serving at the dinner table. And you go, well, yeah, how do I make it more nutrient dense and less risky that I'm going to ingest something with a skull and crossbone on it? It just is kind of the realistic, it makes the most sense.
Yeah, I like that it's very matter of fact. If you just look at the actual regulation, I think where people get it twisted is when you see like organic potato chips, right? Or organic candy. It's like, well, those ingredients are still certified organic. Now, we're not saying that the certifying of that crop being organic then makes the end product a highly nutritious food, right?
Correct.
But
right.
But you could still have a cleaner version. And so I think that's
Yeah.
always a good thing, is to look at that side-by-side list. And I did want to actually ask you about Roundup in particular and glyphosate, because it's my understanding that glyphosate is pretty heavily used among orange orchards in conventional farming. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Roundup is still widely used commercially in agriculture, for sure, for weed control.
Is it more so, like when I look at a list of like, these are the heavy hitters, are oranges and orange orchards on that list?
Yeah, I mean, they'll use it 2-3 times a year just to control weeds underneath the canopy. Sometimes people will spray it trunk to trunk, so they try and eliminate all weeds in the orchard. I mean, it's not a practice that we would ever think is good.
Right.
But some people, they want it to look like a golf course, and that's what they choose. But it's funny because now with citrus greening, a lot of the conventional growers have gotten more and more towards organic practices. They're realizing, hey, greening kills the roots. It takes away, because you can't get nutrients and water flowing as well because of the clogging in the phloem. The roots die. About a third of the roots die. And so you really need to feed the roots, try to stimulate more growth. And they start seeing that, they have adverse reactions after they spray herbicide onto the orchards. They'll have a heavier fruit drop. And they started kind of wondering, like, geez, maybe there is something to that. And so they'll start, they've changed and done other things instead of Roundup, trying to use some other derivatives for herbicides, trying to change the timing of it so it doesn't have, when they're right after the bloom, more fruit drop. So they're realizing that, the soil is the soul that you start with. And, we're just we're not fans of Roundup and glyphosate. We also go the step further on our package. By the Detox Project, we independently third-party test our products to be glyphosate residue free.
Oh, wow.
You're not allowed to use an organic, but it doesn't mean that you still can't work with a Detox Project to go the next step.
Yeah, that's big because there could always be some crossover, some wind, some,
Yep.
something, right? You're always
Yep.
kind of considering the other environments if your farm is neighboring someone else's and they are using it.
Yeah.
That's really cool that you certify that you're residue free.
Yeah.
Let's talk about juice flavor. If
Yes.
that's okay. I'm interested. So do you feel like variance to a commercially grown crop versus an organically grown crop when it comes to just flavor and
Yep.
enjoyment?
So I will give you generalizations on it because grower to grower comparison, soil to soil comparison, you would need to be side by side,
Okay.
right? Because definitely this region versus that region, if you're organic here and then conventional there, could yield completely different results. But if you're side by side, same climate, same everything, you would see on average with a good organic grower, you will have a little higher bricks. So the tree grows a little slower. The compost, the cover crops, when it breaks down, that tree is going to put more energy, not trying to always have as much vigor. You'll see the synthetic fertilizers are just grow. They push it. They want production. Organic is going to be slower. It's like slow release fertilizer is really what organic nitrogen is. When you're putting compost out or feather meal or other types of products, blood meal, bone meal, those things. So you will see a little higher quality from a brick standpoint. Also, there's blueberry studies, higher antioxidants you'll see. It actually it's helpful for the grove and or whatever crop you're growing to be a little attacked. They don't grow in a bubble because when that tree or the vegetable you're growing gets attacked, it has its own response, and its own response is to produce, within itself, turn on its immune system, which helps with antioxidants and polyphenols and those kind of things produced naturally within the fruit. So
No way.
So those are some of the reasons why organic would taste better, because you'll have more antioxidant, polyphenol, more nutrient density. If you're a good organic grower, you are releasing more of what's in that soil naturally. The miners, the molybdenum, the selenium, those kind of things will show up more in your end product. Like a lettuce, you'll have a more nutrient dense lettuce. And sometimes it comes out in the form of flavor, or it'll come out from a standpoint of a little higher bricks, and bricks is natural produced sugar.
Okay, I was going to ask.
Yeah, I didn't know what bricks
I'm
was
using
either.
an industry term, bricks, BRIX. Bricks are naturally produced sugars inside fruits or vegetables.
Oh, okay.
And so you're saying there'd be a higher amount of that naturally produced sugar in an
Correct.
organic product.
Correct.
Fascinating. And I love this idea of, so for me, the knuckle dragger that loves everything you just said, by the way. So, but there's soil, like almost like what you feed it is going to be how it tastes in a sense, right? So the naturally occurring nutrients in the soil that aren't getting eliminated by the different toxins and things that we're throwing on them to eliminate weeds are going to help produce more nutrients in the fruit. But also, it almost reminds me of like bourbon, right? So like you put bourbon in a charred oak cask, and the weather, I know I'm going down a really weird rabbit hole right now.
No, it's good. You're talking flavor. I know what you're about to get to.
So what happens is that you put these casks in these warehouses, and when the winter hits, the staves are all kind of like sealed shut, and the liquid cannot really penetrate the wood, right? And so then in the summertime, they expand, and what happens is that bourbon is going to penetrate all the weather, the unpredictability of it is going to change the flavor of that bourbon. And I almost have that same sense with the unpredictability nature of the plant or the tree giving off a protective sort of reaction to things that they would normally deal with on their own, that if we're coming in and kind of sweeping those things away, it's almost like aging bourbon in a cask in a temperature controlled room where it's going to taste the same every year, right?
Yes.
Whereas some bourbons and some wines, I know I'm going way crazy. Some bourbons and some wines,
I'm there. I'm tracking with you.
I love that you two are
they
on this
might
train.
have they might not necessarily be identified as better. I think I would change the statement there and say you're definitely going to have something different.
Yeah.
You're going to have something more unique. And in, any kind of like craft sense of a wine drinker, a bourbon drinker, or a juice drinker, I'm assuming having that craft, like almost like the season of this year, right? There's going to be some variation is cool. So,
and so it really, the analogy back to us would be just the living biology in the orchard, whether it's on the leaf or it's in the soil. And that is what turns on the most nutrition that plant can gather, right? And so if you have a plant that is filled with minors and filled with all of the majors, it's going to fully have the flavor profile filled out in that fruit. But if you have a soil that is depleted, it is very sterile, what you're going to have is less of that filling up that tree and less of that fruit, and you'll have to just feed it artificially. So you're pumping it with NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. You don't care about all the minors, the selenium, the molybdenum, the boron, the zinc, and all those things that actually have their own flavor conducive, immune response conducive, all the things that make that tree what it is. And so it's pretty fascinating when you really get into it. And see what's out there in the orchard from soil and on leaf and how it can vary.
What I'm kind of learning, and this is awesome, is that, and it goes beyond just juice, but I feel like you've provided a lot of information in the sense of just like organic farming in general. And we see this a lot with protein and meat. We're a hunting family. And when an animal is kind of grazing on the food that it should be, it tastes and the meat looks different. A ruminant looks different when it's, running around.
Great example.
And
corn-fed versus pastured, grass-fed, completely different finished product.
But the nutrient density factor in your fruits and vegetables and like the fullness and more completeness, or the more, I don't know, as God intended it, I'm going to say, flavor of that fruit or of that vegetable is there's a uniqueness there that I know that I crave and I look for, and
I'll take it one more step. Okay, how God intended is then when you eat it, how your stomach and body reacts to a more nutrient dense piece of food, how your gut breaks it down better and different, and how you then have more of that consumed through your intestine into your body, right? So now you're going, woo, okay. So now I actually get more for my money. I'm getting more of that, the minors that your body may need that you don't get from other sources, right? And so that's for us, it's always been about, it's not about more production, it's about more nutrition, more nutrient density. That's what'll fuel us. That's what'll fuel the soil, and that's what ultimately will fuel us the best as humans.
With there's a bit of a shift going on right now. I think what was it? The FDA just said they're banning petroleum-based food dyes. I don't know if that's legit or not. I assume it is.
Yeah, I did see a post about that.
Saw that. Yeah.
So that's super exciting. Like we have young kids, and like they won't even know what the petroleum-based food diet. Like if you think about it, like our youngest, he won't even know. He'll be oblivious. It'll be great. He gets to grow up in a world without that, hopefully. What do you see in terms of the industry and the marketplace as people are becoming more aware of the need for organic, and they're becoming more aware of the considerations of conventional agriculture? What are you seeing as the founder of Uncle Matt's Organic Juices right now that gets you really excited about the current consumer population?
Well, I will say that MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, is exciting for me. that somebody would even talk about that, right?
Yeah.
And talk about, hey, let's look at the label. Let's have more discussions around, what are the ingredients that we're putting in. Now, I'm a guy that likes freedom, so if somebody wants to choose that, then all for it. But I do like the fact that somebody can try to educate and say, hey, there's better, healthier options and choices, and so we don't have to keep doing this over and over again. So I love that there's a bigger platform that somebody is challenging, the path that we've gone down, which is conventional agriculture and conventional, artificial ingredients in food. I don't think those are long-term healthy solutions for the environment or for human health. And I think organic, with RFK Jr. and his platform, he openly talks about organic and how regenerative agriculture and organic are good things. Now, should everybody overnight be forced to try and be an organic farmer? No, that would be a disaster. Again, I believe in freedom and choice. And so I think it would be, from a consumer standpoint, it would be great if they started to demand it because they felt it was more valuable. And then the market will naturally change and catch up from that demand. So, that's what I really hope would come out of it. More people are just aware of, what am I putting in my body? So many people just see a calorie as a calorie. And, your nutrition starts with what you eat. You are what you eat. Health is wealth. And your body now, when you look at all the research that's coming out around gut health and the gut-brain axis and, immune response, all of those things are connected. And so what are you feeding yourself? What are you doing to your gut to destroy healthy bacteria or to generate good, healthy bacteria? I have a goal. I started this company, I was 27. I'm now 53, which is hard to believe. I was a young buck in the room, and now I'm kind of the older dude. But I have a goal to be 100. I want to live to be 100. And I want to impact future generations, personally, my future generations, as much as I possibly can. So living to 100 is a great goal. And I've studied a lot about just food, nutrition, and what I can do to, reach that goal. And it's really starting with how we farm, looking at what you're eating, whole food, healthy food, more fiber, make smart choices. Don't eat artificial stuff. Those things are bad for the gut, which is bad for the body, which causes inflammation, which then leads down a whole path of poor health. And we don't want that. So when I create products, I try and keep that in mind. And I'll tell people, hey, okay, the best thing you do is plant your own orange tree and go eat your own oranges. But if you can't do that, you can at least buy our orange juice, and that's a pretty good backup plan.
Yeah.
Matt, you have a very interesting background because you're both an experienced and veteran farmer, and you're in CPG, food and bev.
Right.
And that's awesome because very rarely there's like a bridge there.
Yeah.
Typically there's almost like there's the CPG folk that the farmers are frustrated with because they're just trying to make money.
Right.
And then there's this back and forth kind of tension. But a question that I have that you would be able to answer, I think, very well with given those facts, is that with this push of Make America Healthy Again, with the pushes towards kind of cracking down a little bit on some of the regulations, and again, very pro freedom, but I'm also pro, if we're going to remove some of the things that probably shouldn't be mass produced and given to people at scale, and ensuring that people are treating the mass populace as well as possible and giving them juice that's properly good for them. What does that correction, let's say that happens. Let's say that RFK Jr. is able to make major changes to the regulations. We're watching some corrections happen with the government finances right now with tariffs and with Doge. And there's some painful correction that the economy is feeling as a result of that. What do you think those corrections might look like in the farming and the CPG industry?
Yeah. So That's a deep question. Takes a little bit more time to unravel. I think if you come at it with the mission of this is for better human health, you're in the right spot, right? And so if scientifically it's shown, hey, this is, not good for you, start there. That's a good place to be. And I would hope that the demand would be there for that product. So the market moves and it's free market capability to do it. And you don't have to impose your will on, hey, now this way everybody has to farm. One thing was there was an experiment, or there was a time, I'm pretty sure it was Sri Lanka, where they came in and said, hey, next year we're all going to be organic. Like everybody has to farm organic. And at first you're like, wow, that's fantastic news. But then it collapsed.
Yeah.
They had big problems with production and yields. And what you found was there wasn't enough people that knew how to grow organic. And so you had wild problems with crop disaster. And so that was not a good idea just to overnight snap your fingers and impose it. It has to be, you have to be ready for that transition. You have to have enough people that can help from either the university systems that we have. They have a great ag universities around the country, and some of them have organic in them, but not big enough to really help transition a large swath of agriculture to it. But it would be great if we could see more of that. If you could see, the land grant universities really leaning into more regenerative organic agriculture practices and start there. While at the same time, really the consumer, because the farmer is not going to change unless he knows, hey, I've got a market for it and I can make a better living. And I don't blame him. I mean, we don't need to ask anybody to sacrifice their livelihood for the good of mankind with, out giving them a good reason. Hey, go out there and, let the market demand it, is what we'd hope it would happen. And so by education, RFK talking about it, people looking at it going, geez, I don't want those dyes. But what I would do is, let's put in blueberry for color or beet for color or those kind of things. And yes, our Fruit Loops may not be as bright, but at least it doesn't have that, those artificial things in it.
It sounds like it starts with educating the consumer. Because if you can get the consumer to start to move that direction, then that will naturally, and I think I'm almost going to use the word obnoxiously, but organically move farmers
It does.
in a better practicing direction. Because if you come in and you just drop the hammer like they did in Sri Lanka and say no more farming like this, then you're going to have it'll be a disaster, right?
Yeah, it would be disaster. You'll have people that, it's not the right transition to it. It has to be market driven. Through education and through benefit, right? And that's something part of the Organic Trade Association we always talked about and debated, what's the best way to grow this market? How do we do it? And it was continued just more education around the benefits of organic, more funding, more studies around the nutritional impact, the environmental impact, those things that people can look for themselves and go, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. Why wouldn't I do more of that?
Yeah, I'm going to say shout out to the moms, because it's really, in my opinion, moms really drove this MAHA thing. I mean, RFK even talks about it when he was going around talking, when he was more on the litigation side for environmental stuff. Moms were coming up to him and saying, please explain why you're concerned about the mercury in this river or this fish, but not in the product being sold to my kid or being demanded on my kid. And so and I think we talked about this earlier too, because you're in the, consumer research world. And so it really is a lot of women having the buying power in the
head of
home.
household. Yeah.
We are the head of household in terms of the foods that we're buying for our family and things like that. And so I am just dang proud of the moms who are 10, 15 years ahead of me, because they have really been the pioneers. And then I get to come up and have it not be super weird that I'm like, yeah, I buy organic food. You know, I don't get a
Right.
lot of opposition because it's like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, you're not a pioneer in that space. That's a decade ahead of you. So
Totally.
shout out to all the moms out there
And shout out to
crushing it.
the German customer that
Yeah,
was like,
seriously.
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm gonna ask this question because I want organic juice," which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I
He's
love that.
he is now 81 years old. I have
Aw.
this summer I'm going to try and reunite with him
Oh, that's so
after
cool.
30 plus years of that moment.
Will you make content around that? Like
I
you have
will.
to
Yeah,
like film
if I'm
that.
able to. We have one of our employees is actually German, and she's from that southern Bavaria area, and
No
she has
way.
tracked him down
That's
and
awesome.
knows he's still alive. And this summer she's going to visit with her family, and she's going to try and go track him down. And I'm like, all right, if we have proof of life, I will fly over and I'm going to meet with him, and we're going to have a wonderful reunion around thanking him for giving me that idea way back in the day.
That would be so cool. You have to capture, as much video footage of that as you can, because I bet the customers would absolutely love to see that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for coming on the show today. Let people know where they can find your incredible products,
Yep.
and where they can connect.
Yeah, pretty simple. We are sold nationwide in over 20,000 supermarkets, so coast to coast, even Alaska and Hawaii. If you go to unclemats.com, we have a product locator. You just click in your zip code and it'll tell you what stores and what products nearby. But, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Publix, Kroger, some Albertsons, Safeways, some Walmarts, nationwide, a bunch of different regional stores, and definitely your local independent co-op or natural food store should have us. If you can find us there, that would be fantastic to support those groups.
Cool. Awesome. I
And if
love
you
it.
can't find us there, you can always order us online and we'll ship it to you direct. It'll be more expensive, but we can get it to any remote area across the continental U.S.
Oh, wow. That's a great perk. That's
Do you have
wonderful.
social medias in case you were to make connection with the German customer
I know, I
and
need
people
to
can
see.
follow
I
along?
need to
Where
see
can
it.
people find you there?
Yeah, so you can follow me on LinkedIn. I have quite a bit of following on LinkedIn, and I give my own little business journey as a entrepreneur, small startup, just Matt
Love it.
McLean
Love
on
that.
LinkedIn. And then obviously our Uncle Matt's page for Instagram or TikTok. You can follow us there, or Facebook. They will periodically do some stuff to follow along with us on the
Awesome.
story.
Well, we'll say goodbye to the audience. And is there anything else, Matt, before we go that we haven't maybe touched on?
We touched on a lot today. It was great. Enjoyed the conversation. We went to a bunch of different places. Yeah, I mean, eat organic, support it. Whether you start with, a grocery load full, a grocery cart full, or just start simple. Go to the produce aisle, buy a couple things, buy lettuce, buy carrots, start there. Just start putting a couple things in your basket every week. It will help us long-term as a country and as a planet. It'll help the farmers. It'll help grow the category. So buyers look at it and say, hey, you know what? There is demand there. We should put more organic in the store. So thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do for bringing awareness and letting me come on and tell my story.